Thank you, Pam. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
That was weak. Let's try it again.
Morning.
Robust.
Morning,
Good morning,
Susan.
everyone.
Morning.
Coffee has sunk in. Yes. I'm Susan Campbell. I'm Director for the Department of Planning and Development within the Bureau of Economic Development. And we're here to share the work that has been going on since January when the county was informed we would receive an allocation for three presidential disaster declarations. So this presentation this morning, sorry, let me just move the slide for you. We'll discuss the impacts that the county experienced, discuss the criteria that HUD requires of us to submit to them in order to receive this funding. It's called Unmet Needs and Considerations and Budget, those three things. And they go into a document called our action plan, which focuses that work on three key areas of planning, housing, and infrastructure. We'll also share with you what the next steps are, as well as what we're asking of you in the form of citizen participation and sharing this information and knowledge with your groups. So as I mentioned, since January, we've been working on a lot of different things that go into our action plan document, and this roadmap shows you the steps that we go through. We identified key stakeholders, many of which are here, and I'd like to give a special shout out to MWRD sitting in the audience. They were actually there last night in Cal Park with our public presentation, so we thank you for your participation. We also collected a lot of data. We sent surveys to grantees, we met with commissioners, we met with councils of government. We sent out word to our partners here at the county and elsewhere about this opportunity, all in an effort to learn about their experience and the impacts that these three disasters had on their work, their lives, and their communities. After consulting with our stakeholders, we established some program priorities that you'll see this morning, and then we validated them with the data. Because an action plan is always about what is the data, what does the data say, and how can it tie back to the goals of HUD's national objectives, which are eliminating largely slum and blight, benefiting low to moderate income areas, low to moderate income people, and addressing urgent needs. And then we finalized that into an action plan, which you'll see, and it's also on our website, I should say. And we are now between steps 7 and 8, where we're soliciting public comment and intend to take that commentary, make revisions where relevant, and include it in the submission to HUD next month. So that brings us up to date with where we are now, what we're expecting from you, and what we're going to share with you. This slide here was for our public participants, namely because I know most of you participated in the strategic plan with the Bureau and ourselves as we defined 4 key pillars of work, as well as a central mission and a vision for how to approach that. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I know that many of you helped shape that for us. This slide here really kind of takes you to our website where all of these documents are housed. So at the end of this presentation, when I ask that you go to your QR code or you submit your comment, and if you get that page, that means that you're in the right spot. Just trying to give you a little orientation. But today's public hearing really will be to ask some specific questions about what are the goals for our DR funding, try to understand the unmet needs of the communities that experience these impacts so that we can then process that into a decision about where to spend the money, and then to provide your comments, your reactions, your suggestions, as well as to make sure that the action plan that you will see is representative of what you feel is important. What are CDBG DR funds? Well, every time there is a natural disaster, and there have been quite a few over the last year or so, between fires, landslides, floods, hurricanes, I could go on and on. If the community submits documentation of the disaster, they receive what's called a presidential declaration. That declaration opens up the gates for additional federal funding to that community to address immediate disaster recovery needs in the case of FEMA and the SBA, and long-term recovery needs, as in the case of CDBG-DR. And Congress appropriates this money, and it goes through HUD, much like we experienced ARPA when we received ARPA, home ARPA and CDBG-CV for the pandemic disaster. And HUD requires that you submit an action plan that addresses the needs identified on the bullets, the slide. And also, the action plan discusses the eligibility criteria for being designated a project or program with this funding. So these are some examples of the types of DR programs that many communities stand up to address the long-term recovery. I must say also that 70% of this grant must be spent in low to moderate income areas. 15% of this grant must address mitigation work. And Chris is here, Chris Narducci from ICF, our program administrator and consultant, is here to help explain those to you. I just talked about what is an eligible activity. Sorry, I was a little bit ahead of myself. But it does need to address a direct and indirect impact. Also, there needs to be a tieback to the disaster. So if someone runs and says, oh, guess what? We had storms 2 weeks ago and my basement flooded. Can I get some of this funding? Unless your basement flooded during those 3 presidential disasters, probably not directly, but we'd have to see what the community encountered, and we'll talk about that in a few slides. Also, the other thing that HUD likes you to do is to spend the funds in areas which they call MIDS, most impacted and distressed areas. In our case, all of Cook County, as well as the city of Chicago and the village of Cicero, who also received these allocations, was considered a MID. But we do have to make sure that wherever we are, that it's largely part of a low to moderate income area. So what are the impacts of the disaster? As I mentioned, this funding was appropriated by Congress to help the county recover from 3 major disasters. The first event was from June 29th to July 2nd in 2023, and it resulted in $500 million in property damage, but fortunately caused no injuries or deaths. Another storm on September 17th of that same year led to $50 million in property damage, again with no injuries or fatalities, but the most devastating event occurred from July 13th to July 15th in 2024, last summer, causing extensive property damage estimated at about $5 million. Many homes suffered roof damages, broken windows, and flooding, with some structures completely destroyed by tornadoes. I know I was at home that night making sure everybody was in the basement as the sirens went off. Additionally, roads and bridges and public utilities were affected, leading to significant disruptions in transportation and services. And in general, all 3 events caused widespread flooding, damaged both residential and commercial properties, and it resulted in waterlogged basements as well as some structural issues. So there is a link on our website that will take you, for those of you who want to read about the disasters specifically, or want to go to the Federal Register and read about this grant in detail, go to our website. You're going to hear that again from me later on. So I'd like to ask Chris, who is here, to take the podium, and he'll walk us through what unmet needs and considerations are. And Chris, come forward, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. As Susan mentioned, I'm with ICF, a consulting firm, and we've helped the county develop an analysis of the unmet needs that will inform the action plan and the budget and all the programs that the county hopes to fund with CDBG-DR funds. I just want to say that the action plan is currently in a public comment period, which means we're looking for additional feedback and information to inform those allocations. The public comment period ends July 28th, and this is really about unmet needs analysis, because we use data that was available to us, but we're also looking for additional data to support that analysis and ultimately the allocations that are made. So as part of HUD's grant process for disaster recovery, they require grantees to do analysis of the needs that remain following the 3 qualifying disasters. So we pull in data from a range of different federal, state, and local sources. These include FEMA, the Small Business Administration. We looked at census data. We looked at information from the Public Housing Authority, also the Emergency Management and Regional Security, as well as the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, the Hazard Mitigation Plan, and we also conducted a survey of local leaders to gain a bit more information about what's happening at the local level. We organized the unmet needs analysis into various categories, most prominently housing, infrastructure, and economic development. So what I'd like to do is walk through the analysis that we've conducted so far, so you can kind of understand what data we're looking at. Okay. So the unmet needs analysis, again, is an assessment of what needs remain. So we look at what the original impact of the disaster was to households, to communities, to infrastructure, and then we also look at what financial resources these households and communities received from other sources. So the remaining unmet needs, it's kind of a subtraction calculation. That's what CDBG-DR typically funds. It's this remaining unmet need, this gap in funding that is needed to fully recover. And this information, HUD requires this information to inform the allocation. So we look at the unmet needs and then we make decisions about what the priorities are. So first thing that we looked at when doing this analysis was something called FEMA Individual Assistance. Every time there's a federally declared disaster, FEMA will come in and offer a program for households that were impacted by the disaster. As you may be aware, there's a database of this information that we could look at to sort of understand, where were the damages concentrated. So this map that you're looking at here shows the concentration of individual assistance applications throughout the county. And it's pretty clear, this aggregates all three disasters. The concentration was in South County and some Western County areas, including Cicero, which received its own grant. Now, we're also interested in understanding where disasters historically have impacted the county. Even though this funding is for 3 declared disasters, you're also able to fund risk reduction efforts. So we wanted to understand a little bit more about where flood disasters have impacted the county historically. This map shows a summary of individual assistance applications going back to 2007. So I think it's pretty clear from this map that if you're looking at flood impacts, there are areas that are typically impacted by flooding. And we think that this will inform how the CDBG-DR funds are used. It's pretty clear that flood impacts continuously, repetitively impact communities, and it makes it very challenging to recover and also for economic growth to occur in communities that are just repeatedly impacted. So we think that that's an important finding from this information. Want to talk a little bit about the survey that we put together. We developed a survey to assess needs that was sent to over 100 local municipal leaders that were free to provide information about what they were seeing in their community. We sent that out and we got very interesting responses about what the needs are at the local level. And this survey is still open to local leaders. If they choose to provide information, we encourage them to do that so that we could get more information. I think one of the most important findings was that almost 90% of those who responded to the survey noted that infrastructure remained an unmet need following the disasters, and most of the leaders who responded said that infrastructure is one of their highest priorities. We also looked at various sources of data to understand housing unmet needs, so the needs of individual homeowners and renters that were impacted by the disaster. We looked at FEMA individual assistance information, which provides not just an application, whether or not a home applied, but also what their assessed damage was and how much money they received through FEMA and SBA. The Small Business Administration, which actually provides loans to homeowners to repair their homes. Now, this data is a little outdated. We're trying to get updated data from HUD and from FEMA, and we will continue to analyze the data. But what we're currently seeing is that there's about $20 million in unmet need across households throughout the county. We also took a look at Small Business Administration loans to small businesses. Again, we were able to see what the direct impacts from the disasters are, and then also how much money they receive through low-interest, federally subsidized loans. This analysis showed that there was no remaining unmet need among small businesses. Again, this data analysis is in process. We're encouraging everyone who has more information to please provide any feedback if you have more information about small business. In addition to housing, infrastructure, and economic development, we also looked at the county's hazard mitigation plan that it produces every few years to understand what the risks are and what risk reduction opportunities there are. So part of this is allocating funding to programs that address the most severe risks, like flood, severe weather, winter storms, tornado, and drought. I think it's important to note again that this would drive a lot of the county's decision making and how. So this rolls up all of the information we have so far about the overall unmet needs. If you look at the first column to the left, we categorize it into broadly housing, infrastructure, economic development. We've looked at data that was available to us. What were the verified losses that were reported by FEMA, SBA, and other local sources? We also tabulated in that third column, what is the financial assistance that we received? And use that to understand what is the remaining unmet need across these different categories. The total calculated loss or remaining unmet need, which is an estimate, is $250 million, roughly the same as what the grant received by the county is. So, as I said, this is a requirement of HUD to do this unmet need so that it will inform an overall budget of programs. And Susan's going to talk a little bit about what programs we've decided on for now and how we're going to.
Can I ask a question?
Can I ask a question?
When you're doing your analysis of sort of the needs, the losses, and the unmet needs, are you modeling, just back to current status, or like rebuilding better than current status, sort of addressing some of the fundamental underlying issues is my question.
Yeah, so it's a good question. FEMA does this different from SBA, and so we rely on the data from the federal sources for those individual home losses and what's needed to recover. FEMA calculates what is needed to get the home back to habitability, so it's a much lower overall recovery cost, while SBA estimates what it would take to return that home to. And what we're trying to do with the data we just received is compare that information to have a better understanding of what the actual cost is to get that home back to a fully status. That's ultimately what we want to shoot for. I expect that housing unmet need to go up once that's going to be reflected in the action plan.
Right, and we'll talk about that as we get to the budget, because sorry, do we have another question? I'm sorry, before we move on.
Keep going, maybe you're going to cover it.
No, that's okay.
Well,
Go ahead, Ed.
I'll ask.
Yeah,
It's a related question, because we keep reading about federal cutbacks, FEMA decimated, whatever. So what happens if there's a giant flood, tornado situation in Illinois? Who's going to fund it? The recovery, that is.
yeah, that's a good question. Well, they'll have to go through the process, right, of applying for assistance wherever it occurs. Are you saying anywhere in Illinois, or are you talking about Cook County?
Well, in Cook County, but
Yeah.
I mean, but anywhere in Illinois, right, or any
Yeah,
state.
it's usually the county, that applies, or in this case, I think the city also applied, but the county helped them with their application. And then it gets processed through FEMA, but we all know what's going on with FEMA. So I can't really answer your question.
I know you can't. I'm
Yeah,
just like
you're just making a
thinking for the
comment.
future, right?
I understand. Okay, good.
Because
Well, it is a
you
concern.
had billions of dollars up there, right? And
Right.
that's, I don't know.
Well, if you're
what we do.
asking about this funding, we are, should we say cautiously optimistic? Because we've already received our presidential declaration, we've already received FEMA and SBA money, and this allocation's sitting on the county's line of credit with Treasury right now. So can they make it more difficult to spend because approvals will take a long time because staff shortages exist? Yeah, probably. Will they probably extend the grant? Well, I forgot to mention we have 6 years to complete the work, but I think that will probably get extended. If it's like all the other disaster recovery grants, they've usually been extended. So, okay, that's okay.
Hope for good weather.
Not sure if you can hear me. This is Manny Flores, online here. I had a question related to the unmet needs analysis for small businesses impacted. Can you, beside the SBA statistics, were there any other statistics that you used for your analysis and the unmet needs?
I think, so no, in that analysis specifically, we only use the SBA information, which is, typically the first piece of information that we have about businesses. If there is, commentary or interest in doing further analysis, there are other data sets that we could look at. We could look at Labor Department information about unemployment and business activity. I think that is something we might be interested in adding to this. If we hear that there's, needs that you're not documenting in this action plan. So there's more information to look at, but it's not included right now.
I'm not sure. I mean, at this point, are we stating that that we have no unmet needs for that category? My concern is that perhaps that there may be, folks that were impacted that do need help, that maybe were not able to access SBA financing or SBA resources, such that the data we're using to determine whether or not there truly are unmet needs is not entirely full, and that we're leaving folks behind, and obviously I know we don't want to do that.
No, absolutely. And this is why we have a 30-day public comment period to expose this work and the data that we're required to use, so that if you know of opportunities or data sets, I know, Manny, you might know of some data sets in particular that we could look at to try to bolster some of the suggestions or questions that you have.
Yeah.
But HUD does require that we use the SBA
Right.
and the FEMA data, because that's the federal data, and there's a whole big, anyway.
Right.
We have to use it. So, but if we can supplement it with other forms of data, we certainly can do that.
Yep. I would recommend, we have such a great network of just, I know the various economic development organizations throughout Cook County. And I wonder if maybe it's still not too late to have some kind of a survey where we can distribute to local municipalities that were impacted in this disaster, they're part of the disaster declared areas, to get a more full, just additional information related to the impact on small businesses in those respective municipalities. I think just that kind of data is really, yep.
No, you're okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's my recommendation.
Thank you. We'll follow up with you specifically to get names of some organizations that you think would be helpful. But we do have a survey that was already created and sent out to everyone, so it's ready to go. We just need who you would recommend we get in touch with, and then we can follow up with them.
Susan,
Yes.
just on this, we could, two things. One, we can share with our small business network all the BSOs and the referral partners. That's 50 organizations, all small business focused. So if you share the survey with us, we'll do that. And then Manny,
just as we're talking, wondering if this would be reason, if possible, to even engage our small business subcommittee of EDAC to have a bit of further discussion on this topic. And so Susan, I could
Yeah.
coordinate with you and the consultants to understand the question of unmet need, because 100 million in SBA loans suggests that there was need for at least 100 million in loans. I don't know if they're all business related, but so I think understanding all of this could be super helpful.
Okay, we'll follow up. Keep in mind, the public comment period is open, though, for only 2 more weeks, but that doesn't mean that we stop meeting with people and hearing what they say, because this is just the action plan. We still have to design programs. We still have to create programs, and there's plenty of opportunity for input and adjustments as we go along.
Just clarification, if something is not in the action plan, does that prevent it from becoming a program later? Or does anything we do in the future need to be identified in the action plan?
The action plan creates a framework for the program and the categories of work that you think, based on the initial analysis of the data, need assistance. But as we go along, just like with regular CDBG, if there is a change in the environment, or, we come upon new information, for example, in the last DR grant we had to end up putting more money into housing because HUD told us that county was woefully short in affordable housing. So we put a lot more money into housing to do that. So that will happen, and you all have experienced that happening with CDBG as we bring before you substantial amendment requests for changes in funding categories as well as projects, and you vote on those. So we, as this grant evolves, we'll be bringing forward to you, I anticipate the next thing that we'll bring forward to you is, okay, we're starting to design our programs. This is what they're beginning to look like. Yes.
Just one other quick comment along the same lines, which is perhaps providing some clarity for our small business owners whose businesses are within a property owner's business. Maybe it's condoed in, I have renters up top, and then I'm renting a space out to a small business. Them understanding who applies for that, and is the owner of the property applying for the business? And then if so, how does the business owner realize that those funds have been allocated and they should be getting some of that money for their institution, their business, as they fit in? So there's some points where there could be some confusion on who should apply and who should get the money if it's sort of in a shared space or a condo building.
It could be either or, Will. It really depends on how the program's designed. So, and basically what that need is, if it's for the retailer or the lessee of the property or the owner of the property. Okay, should we go on? We still have a lot of slides.
Public comment.
Okay, not too many. We're on 23 of 34, so keep hope alive. So, so our overall budget, as we mentioned, is $244,162,000. Disaster recovery takes up about $212 million of that, leaving mitigation at $31,847,000. That's the 15% required amount that we have to use on mitigation work. As Chris is going to walk through these programs with you too, so you can kind of understand what that program does, what this program does. But the budget overall for how it's allocated shows 30% going towards housing, about 55% in infrastructure, and then the balance of it in planning work that will help guide future decisions and locations of where the funding should be. And the last column here shows you what those percentage amounts represent in terms of dollars. So, Chris, you ready to come back?
Sure.
Okay. I'll walk you through the plans. I mean, the actual program.
Thank you. Yeah, so Susan just showed you an overall breakout of the allocations to different program areas. I wanted to walk through specifically what the current vision is for those programs, categorized into planning, housing, and infrastructure. So first is planning. The county conceives of 2 separate, distinct programs for planning. One is a strategic flood mitigation plan, and this is thought of as a county-wide plan that will build off of existing plans that the county has produced to kind of understand what the flood risk is throughout the county, and it will be used to inform project locations of the infrastructure that will be funded through this grant, and then also the housing efforts that will be funded through this grant. So we think that, the first step is always to gather more information to better understand, what makes the most sense, what's cost effective, where the county is likely to see the most benefits. We envision this, to be also an outreach process where the firm that is procured to do the strategic plan will work very closely with the county and also communities, most likely those that were greatest impacted by the disasters. In addition to the strategic countywide plan, we also envision a community flood resilience planning effort that will involve a procured planning firm working directly with several communities that were impacted by the disasters to help those communities develop their own hazard risk mitigation plan. This will be aligned with the strategic flood plan, but it will also be that individual jurisdiction's opportunity to go into more detail and do a further outreach within its community to better understand risk and what's needed to reduce that risk. So under housing next, two distinct programs. Because of the level of unmet need related to housing, we're focused on residential rehab and resilience program. This is a program focused on owner-occupied homes that were directly impacted by the qualifying disasters. We're interested in providing funds for homeowners to reduce future flood risk. A lot of folks got flooding in their basement, more moderate level flooding, not necessarily catastrophic loss, but it would be important to provide them funds to backflow prevention, rain gardens, other property level intervention strategies that will help reduce flood risk in the future. In addition to that program, the county is also interested in funding the development of new multifamily affordable rental housing. So this is something that will benefit low and moderate income renters throughout the county. I think that, based on the need that we're seeing, based on HUD's recommendations in the past, and, obvious to everyone, there's still a great need for affordable housing. So this allocates about $50 million to new construction for low income and moderate income renters. Infrastructure, we've allocated funds to 3 distinct programs. The first is a FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant match program. Based on what FEMA has already awarded to jurisdictions throughout the county in response to these disasters through the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, we know that there's a 25% local match requirement. Fortunately, CDBG-DR can be used as that local match. So instead of local communities paying that 25% match, the county's CDBG-DR funds for that. There's about $37 million in need into our estimates. This is subject to change based on conversation with the communities in of those. But right now, that's one of the allocations under infrastructure. In addition to that, there's a broadly described community flood infrastructure improvement program. This is $100 million of funding that will go towards projects identified in the strategic countywide plan that I described. We have yet to identify specific projects. This is in progress. We think that there is a great need for infrastructure that reduces risk throughout the county. Looking at the maps, looking at repeated disasters, we think incredibly important investment so that the county can reduce flood risk going forward and help these communities thrive going forward, because the flood disasters have been a major impediment to progress and prosperity. So this is a really important investment to affect both households and the broader community. So the county will then use the strategic plan to make decisions about what projects will be funded. We will also work with countywide and local and allocate. Lastly, there's $20 million invested in infrastructure to support new housing. We previously talked about multifamily rental housing. Oftentimes there's public side infrastructure that is necessary to complete that housing, roads, sewerage, other improvements to protect that, to protect those properties. So this is $20 million to help in the development of housing units. just categorized under infrastructure because and that wraps up the programs that are conceived of now. Susan's going to talk a little bit about the timeline.
Before we move on to that, do we have any questions on, yes, Commissioner? Uh-huh.
Yeah, when you get flooding, you're gonna get mold and mildew automatically, and it's probably a problem you're gonna be dealing with for the rest of. Obviously, I'm big on flooding. Okay, there you go. So when houses get flooded, businesses get flooding, you're gonna get automatically the threat of mold and mildew, which amounts to a health hazard. So is there the funding that addresses health issues, health hazards, does that qualify for additional funding to deal with mold and mildew or any other health hazards caused by flooding for businesses and homeowners?
Yeah, we were just trying to figure out what category it falls in. I think there is one. We just don't know what category, home rehab or public service. But we can definitely look into that.
Okay,
That's a good point.
thank you.
Thank you. First of all, Christy DeLaurentis, I represent the South Suburbs through South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. Obviously, you look at those maps, a lot of the areas within the communities within the South Suburbs and the townships there were affected by all three of the storm events. I recall from 2023 that individual communities were really struggling working with FEMA to develop enough demand to qualify for some of the,
Public
reimbursement
assistance.
programs. And there was an effort to try to aggregate municipalities, but not all participated because they just didn't have staff, transitions and things like that. So I think this is tying back to the small business, both home ownership challenges, but also the small business. I know that was one where there was really frustration with FEMA for not recognizing the needs of small business and not enrolling individuals. So I think, as was referenced earlier, those numbers may be insufficient in terms of the overall demand for individual businesses, small businesses that may qualify. So just wanted to mention that. Also, just had a couple of other questions in terms of some of the, you mentioned a FEMA match on infrastructure for communities. What was the percentage of local match that would be required against federal dollars? I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but I thought you did.
Yes, I did. So that's the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So these are grants from FEMA for hazard mitigation infrastructure projects. The local match requirement is usually 25%. That 25%, based on all the grants that we have data on that we received, the county translates to $37 million. So that's the need for the local match.
Okay, thank you. And then just one thing that I would mention too, for individual households, some municipalities have implemented a program of trying to address backflow and some pump failure and whatnot. And I'm not technically sure of the, but I believe it's like a overhead sewer evacuation system. Would those be eligible for these grants? I know that that's really been a nascent demand. Many municipalities I mentioned used to fund these themselves because of budget shortfalls. They've been doing away with those programs, and the demand is out there. We get contacted regularly. I will also say that SSMMA has put together each year for the last 7 years infrastructure demand. We have a lot of flood mitigation infrastructure values associated with that. Happy to share that with you, Susan, kind of tracking what the municipalities are seeing, what the estimates of what they see, and just based on some experiences, how even their estimates are underestimates. So just wanted to mention that.
Yes, that would be helpful. And yes, under our current disaster recovery grant we received in 2014, we did have a housing rehab program. that installed basement pumps. It looked at those overhead sewers and rain gardens and things like that. I will say, though, that it was a challenging program to administer because of the tieback disaster documentation that was required. And many homeowners did not have that because here we are 2 years out. So we thought really hard about how we could put together a program for housing rehab that would not stumble upon that requirement, because that slowed things down and it limited the number of homes that we could ultimately assist. So, this time around, I think we were looking more at the neighborhood in which homeowners reside, because we recognize that many homes flood as a result of the public infrastructure that's inadequate or it's combined or whatever, and it backs up. But many municipalities did the individual assistance to homeowners thinking that would solve it, when in fact it was really a much bigger problem. So now that we have much more money, we're hoping that we can address some of those neighborhood challenges or community-wide challenges that many municipalities have suffered, because it's also affecting the tax bases and, vacancies, et cetera. So many more conversations to come, but thank you. I will reach out to you to get your data and information.
And just curious, is the opportunity, it sounds like when you name communities, that's municipalities that may be eligible for applying, especially if there's grant funding. The Water Reclamation District also a partner that's eligible for partnering?
Yes. We partnered with them the last time around as well. They had a series of projects that we invested some of our DR funding in.
And then just, sorry, I just have a lot of questions. In terms of the planning dollars, I recollect that there had been an effort a number of years ago to try to do some comprehensive countywide planning that local jurisdictions could then have their sub-area. Is this some of the efforts that you identified is really to have more robust participation and get that implemented?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, any other questions? Or would you like to know what the next steps are? Should we go on?
I will note too, before we go to public comment, we do need to pass a motion to open the hearing to admit the public comment. Before we go to public comment, we do need to pass a motion to open the public hearing so that we can admit the public comment.
No? Okay. Yes. Would like to receive a motion to open the public hearing to receive public comments?
Done with your presentation?
No.
You can finish the presentation first.
All right,
Apologies.
let me get through 4 more slides, okay? But they're really fast. So, and it's a good segue to the public hearing part. So we're right here where the yellow arrow indicates on the pathway to getting this approved. The next steps are to incorporate these public comments into the plan, and then submit that plan to HUD in August. And then hopefully they will have about 45 days statutorily to review it and give us their comments, suggestions, although they've been getting kind of cheat sheets as we've gone along all the way so that they will understand what we're talking about and what we're proposing. Then we will hear back from them in the form of a grant approval. We expect that might be sometime in the fall, like around October perhaps. And then between now and the end of the calendar year, we're going to be receiving data, revising it, coming up with program ideas, project ideas, so that we can begin to have some of this launch in early next year. I say some of it because it's going to take a while to get all of it launched, but we hope to have some of that launched in the beginning of next year. So what we're asking of you, get your cameras out. I know they're in your hands. Scan that QR code so that you can embed that information in your phones and share it with all of the folks that you work with, live with, go to school with, and encourage them to please read the document and give us their suggestions, particularly on data, as well as unknown stories that we had not heard yet. You can email your responses to home.response@cookcountyil.gov. I see no one with the phone up.
Well, you can use this.
Okay, oh, that's right, you had the flyers, thank you. Okay, that's even better.
I scanned it.
Oh, good, thank you, Graham, okay. And so, as I said, the comments will be open till the end of July. But you can still send it in even if it's after that. We just won't send it on to HUD because we have to get that into them right away. Okay, I think at this point, this completes our presentation. I'd like to thank the ICF team who came in person to support us today and last night, Stand Up, and Metro Strategies as well, helped with the public meetings and surveys. There's Matt over there near the door, as well as our own team at DPD that's been working to help model and put this together. Thank you all. Okay, at this point, Pam.
So do we want to take the vote first, or do we want to go into public?
Motion.
Okay, so I request a motion to go into a public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Will. Do we have a second?
Second.
CMAP, okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, so we entertain any questions or comments from the public. You will be please come up. You'll be limited to 3 minutes. Please state your name and who your organization is.
And folks can come here if you would like. It's a little bit easier.
Good morning. My name is Rich Fisher. I'm with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. And really, I just come to kind of give a little bit of a testimonial about kind of the results from the last CDBG-DR. Presidential disaster declarations are unusual for this area. You know, it's not a coastal region. It's not an earthquake area. It's not a place where you get this. So it's a little bit of an unusual opportunity. But I just want to kind of commend Cook County and kind of results that came from the last one and kind of example. From the last one, we were partially involved with some of that funding. I think it was around $11 million that we got from the CDBG-DR, and that was part of really an overall investment of nearly $200 million that provide flood relief to over 2,000 homes. We look forward to the opportunity that this is for the county, and any kind of assistance that we can provide, we're willing to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, comments, observations?
I don't know that this counts as formal public comment, but I'll say from CMAP's perspective, I know that the county staff knows that we have a strong technical assistance program where we work with communities to help them write plans for their entirety of their community, bicycle and pedestrian planning. So as the programmatic needs get stood up, I'd welcome a conversation about what we have on tap for our current work, as well as you're thinking about some of the infrastructure coordination. We've been doing a lot of resiliency planning, and so we have a regional transportation resiliency plan that will be completed soon here, which will provide us with lots of insights about where flooding occurs, and overlaying that data with what you're pursuing might allow for additional insights.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Just want to thank everybody for your participation. Sochi Flores, thank you, and all the staff involved and all the participants. Very important, with your leadership in addressing these issues. So thank you very much, everybody. You did a great job on this. So I'm glad to be here. Okay.
We're glad you're here too. Thank you.
Who was
All
that
right,
last
so-
speaker? I can't see him.
That was Commissioner Aguilar.
Commissioner Aguilar.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Hi, just formal public comment from Christy DeLaurentis with South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association. Just want to commend the county for their strategic thinking, really focused on implementation and long-term sustainability resilience, because as we see over the last, if we look at historic data, the south suburbs have been impacted numerous times with flood events, many of which don't rise to the level of federal disaster recognition. But long term, we have to think about the infrastructure and solutions. So want to commend you for thinking about bigger picture, and then really also how to help individual homeowners with their disasters within their own homes. And we recognize that it's not only just what FEMA's level of rebuilding is, but really to make sure that those homes are fully remediated so that mold, mildew, reoccurrence don't happen year after year, especially as the storm events get more and more frequent. 100-year flood, 500-year flood events are happening far more frequently than those timetables. So again, just SSMMA wants to really support this initiative and look forward to resolution on the ground in the south suburbs over the next 6 years. Thank you.
Will Towns, just a comment, and again, as we sort of think about how we're trying to mitigate and address some of these concerns, we've got FEMA and HUD and all that sort of stress to sort of deal with as they're cutting staff and things like that, which may slow down rollout. The other side of the coin is the insurance. And State Farm has just announced they're raising rates 11%. We're seeing other places where these repeated floods are happening, insurance companies sort of pulling out. So not necessarily this body's responsibility, but the county as a whole and other policy leaders, how do we start to think about addressing some of the impact of the insurance rates going up or pulling out, which then makes this work you're doing even harder, as money will need to go farther as less people are able to sort of access other supports from there. So it is something I think as we think long term, as this becomes more frequent, how do we sort of look at addressing some of the insurance challenges and things that are out there that will also, I think, impact our businesses, households, and others in getting these houses back up to standard.
If I may, can I provide public comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Carl Wolf. I'm the executive director of Respond Now in Chicago Heights. Thank you for doing this. I have to admit that I've never sat in on hearings such as this and have never been paid too much attention to DR funding in a big way. So this is all new for me. I guess the one thing that I wonder about, and this is a very, very important, providing affordable housing development and flood, that are protected from flood. I do wonder though about the immediate needs of people, particularly people who are not homeowners, renters, who have been affected by flooding, and how those immediate needs are addressed either through, whether or not that could be addressed through this kind of funding, or if there are other mechanisms by which people can, the people who are renters and whose homes have been, whose rental units have been destroyed or have had to move on, what kind of remediation is available for those households through different programs. And I have a 10 o'clock, so I'm sorry I have to leave soon after that comment, but I just wanted to put that. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Talk about what some
Sure.
agencies are doing.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about a lot of different eligible activities earlier in the presentation. Certainly,
Sorry
HUD,
to interrupt, but could you speak into the mic?
sorry. Certainly HUD and the county are interested in housing outcomes for renters that were directly impacted by the disaster. Again, this funding is explicitly for disaster-related needs, so we want to focus on that. We want to look at any data that's available that shows that need. I think there's a range of activities and programs that could benefit renters. Some other grantees fund buyouts where homes that were in floodplains or high-risk areas could be bought out, and this is more for homeowners, honestly. But there's an opportunity for landlords to participate in those programs also and rebuild elsewhere. There's also development of new affordable housing or reconstruction of affordable housing. Some states and local level grantees fund the development or rehabilitation of rental housing. That's not currently contemplated under the budget that we showed, but if there's a demonstrated need, that's certainly something that the county can consider. I also think, yeah, there was some discussion about housing and facilities for homeless populations. Again, we didn't see in the data we looked at much of a need there, but if there is information that could inform the development of a program that, rehabilitates or constructs new homeless, that is also something that they consider. There's also an opportunity to do direct relief to renters and homeowners potentially, but it would need to go through either a landlord or some other entity providing the housing. And that's something that, if the county sees the need, can contemplate developing a program.
We will be looking, Carl, particularly at our unhoused populations. We had sent surveys out to agencies as well as HAC to better learn the impact the floods had. But we know that that is a need, so we will be looking at how we can qualify something.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I think we will move to request a motion to approve the plan. I think, Graham, did you want to make that motion?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute for the prior directive. Yes, I was able to participate in the committee meeting, and I want to thank everybody that was involved. Susan and your fantastic team and the folks at the county, as well as the two outside organizations. So it's my pleasure to make a motion in support of this disaster relief action plan.
Okay, do we have a second?
CMAP will second.
CMAP, okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have any abstentions? Okay, great.